Hi everyone, thanks for joining me for more Krautrock records. If you have seen all my previous episode and is still around, I guess you're quite into Krautrock and record collecting. This is the last episode where I show my Krautrock records collection, and this is episode 5, which I've called From Klaus Schulze to Zarathustra. So, if you're not into long, tedious videos with much blabbering around records, I suggest you find my video where I just flip through my Krautrock records collection. But if you like long videos, stay put. I'm about to start. Let's start off with one of the most important figures in the Krautrock genre or Krautrock scene. We are of course talking about Klaus Schulze, and this is his solo album from 1975 called Timewind. We of course know that Klaus Schulze started off his career, recording career at least, in Tangerine Dream and Ashra Temple as a drummer or percussionist, but soon developed into a more ambient style and used synthesizers and sequencers in his work. And this is one of his albums in the more ambient music genre with synthesizers, drum machines and sequencers. This is a British edition on the UK Caroline label, a subdivision of Virgin Records. I guess you recognize those Virgin twins. A Roger Dean label design, by the way. I also have this album by Klaus Schulze, his 10th solo album called X. It's a 2 LP set. Quite minimal cover art here, but inside is a booklet. Lots of nice pictures. And this is a wonderful, relaxing, soothing album to listen to. Some liner notes, a little notation. So if you're into dreamy soundscapes and ambient transcendental music, I believe Klaus Schulze is something for you. Now, let's continue with a British band, Sweet Smoke, and their first of 2 albums. Sweet Smoke was a British band, as I said, but they all moved to Germany and lived in a sort of collective there and released their records from Germany. So they are included in this Krautrock series. Sweet Smoke, as I said, released 2 albums, and this is their first one called Just a Poke. Sweet Smoke, Just a Poke, wonderful cover art. The album consists of 2 side-long tracks. Just a Poke, this is Baby Night, and Silly Sally. Even though the songs are in the wrong order, it's a misprint. Silly Sally is the first track on side 1, the track on side 1, and Baby Night, the track on side 2. This is a German Columbia label. Sorry, this is a Greek pressing, I think, but it looks like a German label. But this is an enjoyable album. Nothing too experimental about it, just long jamming, lots of instrumental parts. Nothing too exciting, but all around a good album. Sweet Smoke. Next up we have a giant band from Germany Tangerine Dream, and this is their first album, Electronic Meditation. And this is before they started using synthesizer and sequences a whole lot. Klaus Schulze is on the drums on this one, and Edgar Fröse, the leader and founder of the band, is playing guitar on this record. This is quite unconventional and very, very avant-garde. Minimalistic audio collage. An interesting note, the first records on the Machtas Urau label, the first covers had different dolls without heads and doll body parts spread around in different arrangements. So a theme going on through the first releases on the Or label. This is a second pressing, and the way to tell it's a second pressing, it has and double 5 digits here. The first pressings had only one 5, 56004, but this is 56004. Another way to tell is that the first 13 releases from the Ur label had an opening here for a balloon. All the 13 first releases had a balloon attached to the cover. So this is a second pressing on the Ur label. And I have shown this before quite a number of times. But this is actually a more harsh sounding Tangerine Dream album. It was recorded in a factory, and there are many harsh sounds on this. It's quite creepy compared to the more mellower sounds of Tangerine Dream's later work. But an essential piece if you like that avant-garde pling-plong music from Germany at the time. Very nice to have in the collection. Tangerine Dream's second album from 1971 was called Alpha Centauri, and this is also a second pressing. And the way you can tell it's a second pressing is that the Tangerine Dream logo is on here. The first pressings didn't have that, or if it was Alpha Centauri, which was omitted. And also 556 instead of 56. This is much more mellow to its sound than Electronic Meditation. Still some guitar sounds here, but much more spacey and mellow. And Konrad Schnitzler is also on this one, who of course later formed Cluster. So a second pressing on the O label, and this is quite cheap to find compared to the first pressing. Sadly, I don't have Zeit, which I believe is Tangerine Dream's third album, but I have Atem, which is their fourth and last one on the Ur label before they went on to the Virgin label and worldwide distribution. But this is a marvelous soundtrack, sorry, not soundtrack, but soundscape music. Mellow, drony, spacey, and very little percussion. So this is an essential Tangerine Dream piece. By now, Tangerine Dream have found their sound and their form, and they continue with this sound on Stratosphere, which I believe is from 75 or around about there. And this is a Virgin Records release, 1976, and always wonderful cover art. Just so wonderful to watch. It fits the music so well. Yes, this is on the green Virgin label. So then we have Cyclone, Force Majeure, Exit, and the last one I have in my collection is Tangram. And all of these are typical Tangerine Dream with that dreamy, carpety, spacey sound. My favorite is of course Electronic Meditation, the first one, which is more experimental and harsh sounding. Next up, we have a fairly unknown prog rock band called Tetragon. Now, Tetragon, as I said, were a prog rock band, and they released in their day only this album, and it was only a private release. They made their own studio and recorded the whole album live, but it sounds great. The originals of this one on Suma Records were pressed in about 200 copies, I think, and are so highly collectible that you cannot believe the prices. But this is a very accomplished album, all instrumental. They do their cover of Johann Sebastian Bach's Toccata and Fugue, of course, sounding a little bit like the Nice, but with the addition of excellently played guitar. The key member and talent on this are Hendrik Schaefer on keyboards and Joachim Lohrmann, Jürgen Janer on guitar. Wonderful, wonderful musicians. A very, very good album indeed, if you like instrumental prog rock. After this album, they did some studio sessions for a follow-up, which was never released in its day. But this was released in the early 2000s, I think. 2011 on Garden of Delight label, and it's called Stretch. And it's recordings from about 1973, I think. This is a wonderful, wonderful album, which I'm glad is finally being released. A little bit of background history on the band, Tetragon. Worth noting as well, the band Hendrik Schaefer played in before Tetragon was called Tricolon, and they also released a privately pressed album called Cluster, which is equally as good, but that's more of the Nice blueprint than Tetragon was. Next up, we continue in the prog rock vein with Triumvirat and their debut album Mediterranean Tales from 1971, I think, and 72. And this was released on the Harvest label, and this is straight up prog rock. And you can tell that they have listened to Emerson, Lake and Palmer, especially on their follow-up, their second album called Illusions on a Double Dimple. This is almost a blueprint of Tarkus from Emerson, Lake and Palmer, but still a very enjoyable album. And these are not too expensive. I don't think they are sought after by collectors, so Triumvirat, Illusions on a Double Dimple. If you want to listen to Triumvirat, this is the album to go to, I think. The albums after Illusions on a Double Dimple I find totally crap, sorry. Next up, we have a more heavy rock, progressive, a little bit more experimental, but not too experimental, band called Virus. And this is their first album called Thoughts. And this is a long hair repress again, because the originals are quite scarce and very expensive. originally released on the Pilz label, but as I mentioned before, these long hair repressings always come with nice line notes in an insert with pictures, and this is a solid album. Very, very good. Their follow-up, Revelation, is even better, I think. So, I highly recommend you give Virus, Thoughts and Revelation a listen. We are getting near the end with Walpurgis and the album Queen of Saba. This is also a release on the Ore Records label and was released in 1972, I believe. And this is a straight up prog rocker as well. This is a Pop Import reissue. Under the sticker you can see that, and the LC code of course. And it's quite a solid album. I really recommend Walpurgis Queen of Saba, and if you don't want to spend too much money, go for the Pop Import issue, which is identical to the original, but for a tenth of the price. The only difference are the LC code and the Pop Import mark there. Well, on to some acid folk with Witthüser und Westrup, and this is their album Der Jesuspilz, Musik vom Evangelium, the Jesus Mushroom, it's translated into English, and this is an original on the Pilz label, and look at that psychedelic cover, just simply marvelous cover art there. So this is acid folk at its best with Witthüser und Westrup. And this is an original on the Pilz label, no Pop Import issue here. But these aren't too expensive either, so you can quite easily find originals for good prices. And it's quite enjoyable acid folk rock, this. The second album I have from Witthüser und Westrup is Bauerplatt, also on the Pilz label. Also an enjoyable album on the Pilz label. Bernd Witthüser also released an album on the Ore label before he joined Westrup, which is highly recommendable. Last in line in this series of Krautrock records is a prog rock monster, Zarathustra, and their only album. I believe it was released originally on the Polydor label, and Zarathustra sounds somewhat like heavy rock bands such as Uriah Heep, heavy guitar and organ oriented rock with a bit of harmony vocals such as mentioned Uriah Heep. This is a Second Battle reissue, and Second Battle is one of the best reissue labels around. Sadly, their labels aren't as good as or interesting as Long Hair, but they do some custom labels. So that's Zarathustra, and the last record in this Krautrock records collection. Well, to sum up the cream of the crop from this episode, the top 5 recommendations from me to you will of course have to be Tangerine Dream's first album, the highly experimentational Electronic Meditations, and they are reissued and quite easy to find. I also had to pick Tangerine Dream's Alpha Centauri because the two albums are so diverse compared to one another and show two great sides of Tangerine Dream. I of course had to choose Tetragon with the album Nature, which is a very solid prog rock instrumental album all the way through. I really enjoy listening to this album. And fourth album must be Virus Revelation, even though their first album Thoughts is a great competitor to the second one, but this is the strand of hair better in my opinion. Last but not least, of course, I had to choose Zarathustra, which sounded so international and is a straight up hard-hitting heavy rocker. Really recommend you go and check out Zarathustra. And these originals on Second Battle are great if you want to save some money and not spend too much on the originals. Well, that's it for this Krautrock Records collection series. Thanks for staying, thanks for dropping by, thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed my run through of my Krautrock records. That's all for now. Bye.